Hi, this is Taylor. You're listening to Monday Morning Critic Podcast.
And this is Andy, the other Newton brother. And hello.
That. So I have to say, you two have done some fantastic things, right? For those listening, Midnight Mass, Haunting of Bly Manor, Doctor Sleep, perhaps one of the greatest shows of all time in Haunting of Hill House. Just a really impeccable filmography, and I'm just touching on it. I do want to say that your names have come up a couple times on the podcast. I remember one distinctively. I don't remember the others, but I know I've heard it. I know Henry Thomas has brought your name up with very high regard, very complimentary. Just your thoughts on Henry, because to me he's one of the best out there. He's just phenomenal.
Well, yeah. I know Andy's actually, he's become good friends with him. I'm not as close to him probably as Andy, because Andy worked on Midnight Mass with him, like right. as an actor. But I mean, as a fan, I loved him from E.T. growing up. I was just like, I thought he was the coolest. And then, he's been in Legends of the Fall. He's been in so many movies, and I just respect him as an actor so much. And he's just he's such a sweet guy. So that's my thoughts on Henry.
Oh. Yeah. And I think Henry really, Henry is an artist, which is I think not rare these days, but just it's hard to find someone who is acting and is an artist and can really bring something to each character. And Henry does that entirely, and is also just such a wonderful human being. I know when I was up on Midnight Mass and I got to spend a lot of time with him, I was pretty stressed out through that process because I'm not used to being on camera. And Henry would always find a way to like make everything just like super chill. It could be like the craziest situation. Everything's on fire purposefully. And, they're about to roll camera and I would have to sing or do something on camera. And Henry, multiple times, I think he knew that I was sort of nervous. He'd just kind of look at me and say something like stupid, but in the right way. He knew that I needed to like chill out. And just really an artist in everything he's done, as you already know, all the amazing things that he's done.
And to be this good for this long is unheard of. Like you don't,
insane.
It's
I think
crazy.
that speaks to his artistry. I think he really like gets into the idea of not just like, here are the lines, here's the story, here's my character. He gets into like who it is to be that character, and that really shows in all of his projects.
Andy, how'd you like being on camera? Was that something you do again, or is it kind of wherever they need me, I'll be there for them? How did that come about, and are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, initially it came up. Initially, Taylor and I were both going to be on camera,
Okay.
but because of COVID, they would only allow one of us to go.
Timmy.
So that was Timmy in the Wax Shack was my gig. So I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic kindergarten, elementary school, high school, university. So it just made sense because I knew all these hymns. I knew everything that was sort of needed to be done. So I really enjoyed doing it. It's funny, at first I wouldn't have said I would do it again. I was just doing it like I'll do anything that Mike and Trevor Macy need us to do. And by the end, Mike and Trevor were both joking with me. I think they asked me close to the last day, like, would you do this again? And I said, I definitely would. It's a ton of fun to be able to be on camera and do what everyone does up there. But it's equal parts stressful and exciting. You know what I mean? There's the excitement of what's happening, and that it's like everyone is catering to a shot and what's happening in the shot. But then there's also the stress of like, you really have like seconds to like do what happens, and you either end up in the scene or not in the scene. That whole, the scene in the church where all that crazy violent stuff happens there's a lot of things happening there, and it's really stressful, but a lot of fun. So I would do it again.
Yeah, I couldn't. I mean, I can't memorize lines. Everyone being, I have a face made for radio, so I'll stick with that.
That's not true.
But you guys are so good in so many ways. So I know you both. I think I'm being correct here. Taylor and Andy, you both have a fondness, or I should say, a foundation as far as when it comes to music and film scoring. You both have an affinity for John Williams. Is that a fair statement for Taylor and Andy?
100%. I mean, the guy is a legend. What's not to love? I mean, we all grew up inspired from him. even as a human being, I wish I could say I hung out with him and played tennis on the weekends, but he's just such a phenomenal composer. That's really, I mean, just how much the landscape of film music has even changed from, the days when he was writing a lot, like, when he started Jaws and wrote on these movies. The way we show our work to directors and producers, it's just changed so much from, there wasn't samples back then. You had to just use the orchestra. It's just he's a phenomenon to me, and he's one of the composers I definitely admire a ton.
Yeah, and I would echo that. In fact, you've got two of my favorite composers on the posters behind you with Tom Newman and John Williams back there. So it's John Williams is he makes it sound easy. I think that's what's so brilliant. It's really hard to do that, and you have to just be an expert at what you do. And he clearly, I mean, he's beyond an expert.
Your favorite. This is such an unfair question, and I've kind of battled asking you this. For me, it's Yoda's passing away, and it's Luke looking up into Tatooine, into the two suns. As far as his music really impacting Star Wars for me, like I think I was in tears in both of those moments. Is there a Star Wars moment for both of you? I mean, that Williams really just hits it. I mean, he hits it out of the park for all his stuff, but is there a specific moment in Star Wars that you're like, boy, Williams made that just unbouliable?
The two sunsets right away for me. That's
the binary.
Oh, sorry, sorry.
No, I was struggling with the name. I said two sunsets. I'm not.
No. But yeah, that it's just such a. It does everything. It does everything. I'm so moved every time I hear that piece, and the first time I saw it in conjunction with the film, it's incredible.
It's strangely enough, and it's not Star Wars, but I think of just when before Darth Vader became Darth Vader, he was like hinting at these like Vader like motifs in a romantic way with like what's her name, Princess I'm blanking right now, but the love interest in the film, and he was just the music just weaved and into this, like, you heard a little bit of the dun dun just at the very end. You just got a little taste of it, and he's just so good.
Yeah, and talking about somebody again who's been doing it for so many years, and I've been dying to ask you guys a question, and I've asked other composers this, and I can't really get to the heart of. I know what I want to say, but it's hard to. I'm not trying to imply anything negative here, right? So the Batman has come out, and Michael Giacchino has also scored Rogue One, and many people said they thought that the main score of the Batman sounded like the Imperial March. I mean, clearly Michael's a top shelf composer. He's like you guys. He's fantastic. What is that perceived as, right? Because he's clearly not trying to rip anybody off, but he pays homage to Williams. And if you listen, I guess, any composer who they study with, it all kind of, I guess, their work shines through in because he really has this affinity for John Williams. So you could tell scoring Rogue One, that experience carries over. But when you have something that's that similar, how is that perceived? Is that an homage? What is that, guys? I don't know if you care to comment or if that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes through in a lot of different ways. I think that composers all sort of bring their experience with them. I mean, John Williams brought Eric Korngold with him. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And I think that, like, I mean, and I really, I just watched the Batman 2 weekends ago, and I loved it. Like, I really thought, like, I know exactly what you're talking about. It has sort of like the
done,
yes, exactly. Like, and it's very simple. It's like just a smaller portion of it, but I thought it was very effective in the film, but also not doing anything that was like, I didn't think like, oh, this is just John Williams. I thought like, oh, this is very effective. And I think that happens a lot, and sometimes it's purposeful and sometimes it's not. And I think both are, I guess that gets into the art of it, right? Because I know that we all draw from our sort of experiences.
100%. I mean, you could listen to Gladiator and you can hear Holst in the score, and it's just, Hans probably really loves that score, or maybe he was inspired by it, or maybe accidentally. You know, I mean, and there's only so many notes, you know, and it's just a matter of time when you're dealing with these like simple notes, but things cross over and stuff. And I think that score you could also really tell from the way that it was orchestrated and the way that it was recorded, that he had a lot of thought and a lot of he didn't just wax over it. It was very detailed in his approach, I feel like. And I took it as like a inspiration from it. And I feel like that's probably how he meant it.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. But I always feel when I ask that question, I've never found a perfect way to phrase it without making it sound like, I'm not saying he's like ripping him off, but
no.
But a lot of composers run into that. I mean, we hear scores all the time where, you know, sometimes too, you know, the movie is tempt with music, and the director becomes really, really attached to the temp music, and so the composer is trying to get closer to something that's not really maybe what he or she would have gone to, right. You know, and so I think that you get a little bit of that sometimes where it's sounding a little bit like that, or it's inspired. There's a whole bag of reasons, as Andy said, but I feel like most of the time it's, you know, it's just a matter of chance, because there's only so much music, and there's gonna be crossover, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of. I feel like I hear Thomas Newman everywhere. I feel like I hear Hans everywhere. Not note for note, but like pieces and bits. But that's a good thing, I think. Like that shows that people are taking they're learning from the best, I feel like.
I totally agree. Yeah, and I think that's the school of life within composing too. I think it's like, you know, you could go to law school to learn about law, and then you become an attorney, and then you get into a courtroom, or if you're not in a courtroom, you're learning from the process. And I think it's the same with composing. There's, you know, you're on a road by yourself, and I think the only thing you have to draw from are, you know, the other experiences and composers who have kind of, you know, done it. And it's interesting where it leads you to, right? It leads you to like an interesting place. Like you might be, you know, studying something that Tom Newman has done, and you discover something like, oh, it's like, I really enjoy how he did this. And that leads you to, you know, try something else within that.
Right.
It's, I think it's all very inspired.
And it's funny too, because, you know, it's nice when people are inspired by lots of different things, because it really, I feel, helps also push the artistic, you know, medium for cinema, because it's nice to have, you know, something that sounds different than Hans, or something that sounds different than another composer, or John Williams or something, because there's tons of room for new and creative sounds inspired by all kinds of things. And so I love it when there's a variation, a variety, because it starts to give a sense of a different sort of sound that maybe is fresh and newer than sort of, you know, when everyone's just trying to only use, you know, a few palettes. So it's nice when that happens.
If we were to make a Mount Rushmore of living composers, right? We're putting Williams, we're putting Zimmer, we're putting Thomas Newman. Who would you put as your fourth? Either of you? Who's your fourth be?
Living
movie composers.
Living.
Oh wow.
Boy,
this is maybe the worst unfair question I think I could have dropped on you guys, because if you leave somebody out, then it looks like you're playing favorites, and then you're not. So it's a tough question. I mean, if there's a tie, it doesn't have to be. All right, I'll make it a little easier. One person you would consider. Like, it doesn't have to be the person.
Well, obviously, you know, I mean, I know Andy's. I mean, just the fourth person, correct?
The fourth, right? I mean, that's my three. I would never ask. I don't want you guys to like. You could give me any name you want that you feel like, you know what, it could be up for consideration.
Oh, this is a great question, actually, and so tough.
It's very tough. I would go with someone that I feel like he's looked over a lot, and I feel like he hasn't done a lot lately. But I would probably say James Newton Howard.
That's a good one. It's a really good one.
Yeah, I love The Village. I think what he did with The Village was just a stunning score. Signs. I mean, even the Last Airbender had things in it that, I mean, you know, I know the film didn't blow up as much as I think they wanted to at the time, but the score is fantastic. He's done some brilliant work, and he has a sound too, you know. Obviously, you know, yeah, living is the part that stumps me, because it's like, you know, there's so many movies, and unfortunately they're all passed away.
I have to say, in fairness to you guys for this question, before we hear Andy's answer, I have to say that, like, I get made fun of a lot because everyone jokes that I have 100 movies in my top 5. Like, it always, you know, saying I always get, so like, yeah. I will say, like, I never go back and forth on Hans or Tom. Actually, I do. I go Thomas Newman and Hans. I always go back and forth who I like. You know, they're both so good.
They're both amazing.
Yeah, it's like I'll throw you guys in my top 10. I'll throw others in my top. It's like it's a consisting, like, but it's all appreciation. So
I think you know, also too, to be fair too, I think, you know, Edward Scissorhands is a brilliant score.
Yeah,
you know,
so good.
Danny Elfman is a legend. You know, I mean, he can't be overlooked. He's just an incredible composer. There's you know, there's so many great guys. It's hard to pin one down, but I know Andy's mulling it over.
No, I'm on 2 names that, and I agree with what you just said about Danny, especially after I just watched his Coachella set a couple weeks ago, and actually it's incredibly inspirational to see that set, because just to go from his new music to Edward Scissorhands to Nightmare Before Christmas, it was really fun.
I mean, even Alice in Wonderland, that one riff he wrote was just super catchy, you know. Da, 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 da,
yeah.
Alice, you know,
Alice.
He's so good.
Yeah, I would say so. I had 2 names, and I can't decide on one, so I'm just going to throw them both out. Patrick Doyle and Harry Gregson.
Patrick Doyle,
good ones.
I really Patrick Doyle has done some things that, like, I didn't know he was scoring. What was the one on the train? I'm embarrassed, I can't remember the name of the film.
The Kenneth Branagh one, yeah.
And that whole end, he has like a 10-minute cue at the end of that where they reveal everything that has just happened in the film. And I didn't know who did the score going into that film. Midnight on the Orient Express, right?
Okay,
that was
yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Oh my God, that piece of music is just incredible, and the way it just moves through the story. So I'll go with Patrick Doyle.
Are you guys able to watch a movie or a show without focusing on the music? Like, can you just watch a well done movie or a well done show? And I'm not saying you're like nitpicking, but like, just, you guys sound like you're just in appreciation of so many people, which is such an awesome attitude to have. Can you guys watch something without being like, wow, that's really a great piece of music? Or is that hard to do?
No, not at all. I love so much music, from everything from shows to, you know, soundtracks, whatever it is. There's so much to appreciate, and I feel like as artists, we're always trying to feed that hunger of learning new things and learning new stuff. And Andy and I will always geek out with each other on new things with different artists and stuff. But I think when I'm watching a film specifically, I just can't help but be like, oh yeah, there's that thing, or wow, that's, you know, I remember when I saw There Will Be Blood, I was like, that was a very interesting approach to kind of go in this aleatoric sort of horror. I would almost say horror at moments, like this disturbing freaking tension. And that's not the first direction, you know, I think someone would think of. Right. But I thought it was so refreshing at the time. And then he would bring in this like bump, 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 this like, you know, this riff. And I just thought it was very, you know, and he's inspired by certain classical composers and certain people. I can hear what he's, you know, but it's the fact that he made it his own and it's fresh. It's just, there's so much to be inspired by when I go to, I feel like any movie, it's, you know, even if it's a score where I feel like I wouldn't have done that, or maybe I feel like something could have been maybe a little better, I can at least appreciate something in the music, you know?
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. And it's I have the same thing. I don't think that I think that it's, even before I was scoring for a living, I mean, when I was still riding a bike, I used to ride my bike to, like, Music Plus was the store in LA. I would ride my bike to that store after I'd watch a movie that I had seen and heard something, and I'd have to go find it, and I'd have to get my hands on it. It's the same way now. Like, I mean, the first time I saw a Social Network, like that dun 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 dun, it was just like, oh my God, like just a couple notes and so beautifully written. I think it's there's just a nice appreciation, I think, for all of it. It's rare that I'm like, there are times when I'm a little let down by things, but also knowing the process, I'm usually, not going to think ill of that composer, because it could be that's what the director wanted, that's what the studio wanted, maybe that is what the composer wanted. So usually I just kind of be a little bummed out that it's not all that I feel emotionally. But
and I feel like creativity is like, if they're striving to be creative in their approach, what's not to admire about that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well said. And you guys are you strike me as fans and obviously people that know what they're doing professionally. It's just for me, it's a pleasure to watch. Have you guys ever blown through like a VHS tape, gone through it, or like a cassette tape? Because I remember, I'm a little older than you guys, but like I used to listen to Jerry Goldsmith, the Hoosier soundtrack.
Oh.
I think I blew through that cassette tape. Like, talk about, I know he's since passed, but talk about a composer that I feel like is just a legend, right? Just
yeah. I mean, I don't even know what I mean. I went down this whole rabbit hole one time about something that he did in the Patton score about like recording trumpets and then running them through an echoplex. And I went on this deep dive of just like, how do you recreate that? Not in from the standpoint of like, I want to rip that off, but just the process of what he did. And I think that what he did was so awesome from like the standpoint of both compositionally and production wise. Like, I don't think I realized until about 10 years ago how big into production he was, and like noodling with gear that was available and tape machines and yeah.
And did they have like an echo, the senior like those trumpets? It's almost like they had like this echo. Is that Patton you're talking about, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I think it's a triplet thing, right? It's doing like this triplet thing, and it's like, it's very subtle, but like it's so effective. It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like when we talk about these scores, and I hear you guys use like terms. I've heard you guys have been in other interviews, and I feel like I really know my movie scores. Like, I know who did what movie. I'm really good at that. But I don't know if you guys have ever seen Days of Thunder. Tom Cruise catches a lot of shit from Robert Duvall because he doesn't know any of the terms. Like, he doesn't know any of like the racing terms. He knows he could just drive. That's kind of like me. Like, when you say like temps or spotting, I don't know what the hell that means. Like, I wish I did. Like, and it's embarrassing that I don't know. Like,
no, it's not embarrassing.
This one guy that was interviewing you, I think it was your second time with him. This guy knew all the terms. Like, he was such a great interviewer. Like, I wish I was that good with what he was doing with you guys. Were like talking like you were like peers with each other. The three of you. It was like amazing to hear. And I was trying to learn. I got my car. I was trying to Google the terms. So I wish I knew more on that end. I think that's my area of improvement as somebody who loves movies and television, guys.
I mean, there's always things to learn for all kinds of things, but I mean, spotting is just when you sit down with the director, go over the film with the director and producer, and so it's all super boring terms.
Yeah, but it's all. I think the learning though is there's always things that like I'm in a studio with John Debney, and like the man is like a legend of like how to score a film, like the way he can like command like. I just like conduct an orchestra and like in a quick pass, just quickly like navigate. That's like a whole, you know what I mean? So even on our end too, like the learning of things, like it's fun. I think that's what makes it fun. If we all were done and knew everything, right? I don't think like I could tell that you're excited about all this stuff just as we are excited, And I think that's a good thing.
I could listen to you guys talk. And let me ask you, before we dive into your career specifically, Andy, what's one thing that you really love about what Taylor does and vice versa?
Oh, Taylor's got an excellent ear for like hooky, catchy melodies. He's like very good with like, there's times when like I'll build out a scene. I'll have everything there and I'll feel like the turning points are right or everything, but something's not there. And I'll just play it for him over the phone. He'll be like, what if you just add like, ba-na-na-na-na, or whatever, on top of it? I'll be like, yeah, that's it. he's got an incredible ear for that. Not to mention that he's like the mad scientist of gear. He's got like just to the left of him off camera is like like the Death Star of like modular synths.
Oh no. I mean, what's not to say great about Andy? I mean, Andy is a very rare composer, and I don't think a lot of people know how good he is. I think that's something that is. I was a fan of his before we were working together, and he plays. I mean, not just a huge plethora of instruments, but he plays them at a level of professionalism that most people, when you say, "Oh, I play this," or "I play piano," or "I play guitar," it's more of a not, it's not at that level where it's a studio professional. That's kind of how Andy is. Anything he sits down. I mean, I had a cello once in my room, and I was, I'd been practicing, and he just came in and started playing it, and I was like, "Oh, do you play cello?" And he's like, "Not really." And it was just like he was playing it. It was just like he's just that way. He's also one of the fastest composers I've ever been around. He can write more music than anyone, and at the same time at that same high quality. And then he's just incredibly positive all the time. He's always inspiring everybody, not just the composers or our assistants or orchestrators, but he's just so positive that it's infectious, and it makes you want to be a better person. So I think that's pretty much what that's about as good as it gets.
Wow, your check is in the mail, buddy. Wow.
you guys make for one hell of a team. You guys meet in 2007, is that right? You guys kind of kick it off there.
I
think
the
ballpark.
2001 is we actually right around 2001, 2002. We met between a friend of ours, and Andy started coming over to my house, and we just started kind of like playing different music and stuff. And he was already scoring tons of movies and some commercials and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like there's what is something that people don't know about co-scoring, right? Because I feel like you guys are an awesome team, and I don't feel like all composers could do it, right? So I think people have feelings. I think they're not trusting enough. I think some people would have a tough time with it. I think it's tough to work as a team in unison, to be politely critical, and yet to work efficiently as a team. What's something that people really don't know about co-scoring, guys? What do you think? Is there something that they don't understand about it that you guys have come to realize?
I think that you really have to check your ego at the door. And I think that is for every part of the movie making business, like not just composing. I think that like if you are such an artist that you can't see past your own sort of art within the big project, it causes a lot of problems. And I think it's helpful for Taylor and I to have that like checking of the ego at the door with each other, where we kind of like, we have a friendship and a team sort of situation happening, but then that extends on every project. Like we basically bring that to the front door of a film, and then we're a team of another team, and I think that it's hard when people get too precious with things. You have to kind of trust your team, trust your music editors, and trust your producers and directors. I mean, there's times when Flanagan's a great example, and his producing partner Trevor Macy. Like there are times when we'll talk about a scene, like a big end. There was like a big end scene in Dr. Sleep, and we had talked about it for months and worked on it. We recorded a huge piece of music for it. Everyone loved it. Mike said it was a grand slam. The studio loved it. Trevor loved it. We loved it. It was all great. And then like the last day of the mix, Mike kind of turned to us and said, "You're going to hate me, but let's try this." And he asked the mixer to mute the track and play the scene back to hear what the scene did for everyone emotionally without the music. And it worked great. That's not like the music was excellent in there, but the scene without the music, after we had been used to hearing the music, we understood the full capability of not having it. And I know this is a long answer, but it goes to the point of like a team, and within a team, in that team, we trust Flanagan, we trust him and his producing partner, Trevor Macy, to make that final call where we're just like, yes, let's do that, and that's really helpful. And Taylor and I are, it's a learning process every time, like we're both give notes to each other and try to sort of triangulate where the music is going, because music is so subjective, and it's hard to, anyone who thinks that they know the right answer is already wrong, I think.
Yeah, well said. And on that topic, you were at remote control, right, Andy, for a little bit?
That was Taylor, actually.
Taylor, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Taylor, you were at remote control for a little bit, correct?
That's true. Yes.
So let me ask you this. So and people laughed because I've had other composers for remote control on, which for those listening is Hans Zimmer's, like, what would you call it
I mean, it's changed over the years, but basically, essentially, it's a bunch of composers who who all kind of rent different rooms, and also musicians, not just composers, who kind of have a place there, and they all collaborate on certain things. Some do, some don't. And that's kind of the basic element of it.
Yeah, I got laughed at when I said because I was trying to process this place, and I'm like, it's to composers what Harry Potter is to wizards. All I'm thinking about is these really talented guys and females just doing this wonderful things. I mean, remote control seems like a place where a lot is happening. Like, I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall in some of those places, at remote control. But let me ask you guys this. So you talked about, Hans is known for being, being a listener, being receptive to ideas. And I feel like the two of you have said the same about Mike Flanagan. On the topic of being a team player, team effort, do you feel that that's part of what makes Mike a really good storyteller? Is that, sure, I mean, Andy, I heard what you were saying about, him muting a track. But I also believe that you guys have said there's times where, he's open to, like, things that have changed his mind, have gone the other way. So is part of him being so receptive be a key component into him being a wonderful storyteller? And I'll replies from both of you, whatever you guys want to add.
I mean, the thing that's amazing about Mike is that he is not he's beyond a professional at so many different crafts of different areas of the filmmaking process, which is a very unusual, actually, to find someone who is an incredible writer, an incredible editor, an incredible director. It's just all those things he does at a level that he envisions what he's doing before he does it. So he has an idea or a very clear direction where I feel like it's different for every director. It's different for every writer. And Mike is very specific. Like, he knows what he's going for. So because of that, it takes out a lot of guesswork, or takes out of, like, that kind of thing. He's also very open to good ideas. He's also not so closed off to being like, oh, I don't want to know this or know that. He's open to good ideas. He encourages it, and he champions his actors, his crew, us. And so we try all kinds of crazy stuff that we're going to be like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go, but we'll throw several ideas at him. So if one doesn't land, there's another one, and I think that's kind of the approach. But, Mike is also a lot of people don't know this, but he's an incredible composer. He's an incredible piano player. He's a brilliant musician. And he's written stuff. He's played on scores. He sang on Midnight Mass.
Wow.
And he's just so he has so much talent across the board that and he's he doesn't really need to showboat it. He's just very comfortable just doing it, and it kind of lives, and it becomes this amazing thing, and it's unusual. And I always am in awe of the work he does, and it's always, for Andy and I both, we enjoy that collaboration because he pushes everyone to be better. He inspires you to be better at your craft, and I think he inspires, pushes himself too.
Right. Well said.
Yeah, and he's exactly to what Taylor said. He's very open to, he loves being wowed. He loves being surprised, and I think that's always we're always looking to do that across the board, because we don't want to just do this, like, sound this. I mean, no one wants to just sound the same. And that's the really hard thing to do, is to be unique each time. And it's, you don't always do it, but it's hard to do. And Mike is very, on Midnight Mass, we had a cue where we wanted to sort of do a filled out, like, orchestra light version of one of the hymns that was an instrumental, for a very emotional scene. And Mike didn't want to necessarily do that, and then sent us an email that said, the subject said, "Fuck you." And then in the email, it said, "I'm bawling my eyes out. This works so well. I hate you guys and love you guys. Thank you." So I think it's but look, like, that's the positive story. Like, that could go the wrong way. That could go like, "Why did you guys waste my time?" I mean, he would
with
never
the same
say that,
with the same subject line, "F you."
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's just that's the game you have to play, is like, team players across the board. You kind of like go at it with no ego, and know that, like, sometimes it's going to hurt and sometimes it's going to sing. It's fun.
Yeah, that's really well said. Is he talented? I hear you guys talk about how musically inclined he is. So, say if you guys never existed, say if you guys took a different path in life, is he talented enough to score his own projects?
Yes,
I think so.
Yes, I do too.
Wow, that's no joke.
I think he just doesn't have the time.
Right.
I think he absolutely, yes, 100%.
So that's the positive of having a director that's musically inclined, that knows what he's talking about, that really is in tune and in touch with what works musically and what doesn't. To me, some composers might view that as maybe a little bit of a threat. I see, and you guys see it clearly, as nothing but a positive.
It's very rare too. I mean, we've worked with a lot of different directors, and they've all been very talented and unique in their own way, and the way they approach it. And, having someone yell at you a chord progression of how, let's change this, or let's go to the minor here, or use terminology like that. We're used to more like, hey, let's make this, more colorful here. Let's make it darker. Let's go small. Mike will use those terms too, but he'll jump into the music, the music tech aspect of it.
Yeah. And both work. Like, there's no, I mean, we've worked with directors and producers where they, they'll say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I don't have the terminology how to describe this, but what I'm looking to achieve is, A, B, and C, or, red, orange, and yellow," and that's, it all gets there. So it's just a sort of a different approach each time.
And Mike's wife is an amazing actor. My God, is she good?
Oh, yeah. She's, yeah.
I wanted to get, I'm not going to take up all your time here, but you guys have been so kind. Thank you for all this time. I just want to dive into two quick projects. You mentioned Dr. Sleep earlier. I got to tell you, when I was at the theater, and I think Dr. Sleep is obnoxiously underrated. I saw it twice at the theater, and both times the audience, when the Overlook came on, the theater went bonkers. Like, they were out of their mind. That's why I go to the theater, because I love those reactions. I love, like, when people appreciate the music, the score. Like, those are the kind of moviegoers, like, sit me next to them every single damn time. Did you guys, I mean, and Henry is phenomenal as the bartender, but that's a conversation for another time. Talk about Dr. Sleep, and what a beautiful, underrated project that, different music, obviously, for those listening, from Hill House, but still effective, very effective in its own way.
I mean, that project was just such, I mean, everything we do, we love, and it's always special in some way to us. But that project was very special, just because of the way it was approached, and just what it was coming from. The standing on those shoulders of those kind of movie makers and those storytellers. It's something that will just not be forgotten. And we spent a long time, everything in that film, not just obviously, I'm not going to speak about the writing and the directing, but just from a music standpoint, it was so specific. We analyzed and dug in and did so many things very specific to that film, based off of The Shining, based off of our conversations with Mike. And there was nothing that wasn't done with, like, just absolute detail. And it was so nice to have the time and and also the ability to fail and experiment at different things in the studio, because, you know, we were on that project for probably 10 months, something like that.
Wow.
You know, and we don't normally get that length of time on a film. And that's not just because of the size of it. It was also because, you know, we were writing and trying ideas right around the time Mike just got into production. So we were trying already all kinds of stuff. And it just was an absolute blast. It's so much fun to kind of to play in that sort of you know, environment. And so I won't talk all the time, but I'll let Andy speak. But it was, yeah, I mean, I got goosebumps when we were with the orchestra and we were, you know, playing that final theme of Approaching the Overlook. Just the hair on my arms just standing up. And I think even the players, you could tell they were just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was a thing. And Mike was there that day. We were all at Warner Brothers with the orchestra. And the first pass they did of it, everyone was like, there was a whole thing after they finished. Like they, you know, they ran the first pass and everyone was we all just looked at each other like, holy shit, that was incredible. You know, like it just really landed real hard for everyone. And yeah, that film, you know, coming into that film, it's like, you can't overstudy The Shining, and not from a standpoint of like that you need to like do all the things that The Shining did, but to really do as much justice musically to Dr. Sleep as Mike had done to the film and the story. And we wanted to make sure we knew everything about The Shining so that we could, you know, again, not rip off The Shining, but know the approach, because a lot of The Shining was music edited. It was 20th century music edited on top of each other. Like we saw the music editorial cue sheet that was like handwritten, and it was like it was unbelievable. It was like just songs overlapping other songs and certain parts like repeating in different places. Super effective. But when you tell someone to write something to invoke that same thing, it's a tall order, because you can't just like make random noises and go like, it's art, it's amazing. It has to be specific. And so it was, you know, at first I think it was a little stressful, because when you come at it from that approach, you're trying to think like, well, how are we gonna sound terrifying and chaotic and weird, but not for the sake of being weird and terrifying and chaotic. It from the standpoint of like, what is the story and how are we going to tell it? And you know, we found our way, and I think it was a lot of fun in finding our way, and we found things to do that we could execute. You know, there's a lot of serial music where you basically play all 12 notes before you repeat another note, right? And that's like a thing. It's like I studied it in college, and you would come up with these sequences, like what could sound cool. And there's a thing, it's not a new thing. Like, you know, 20th century composers have done this, but you can use all of the notes in 4 chords, in 4 basically 3-note chords, right? So we did that. We combined, like you'll have like C minor and G flat as 1 chord, and that uses 6 of the notes. And then I think it's D minor and E major. I could be getting that wrong. You play those 2 chords together, and that's all 12 notes. So we combined those into chords that sounded kind of cool, and use those as sort of that's just one of the, you know, the 15 sort of ideas that we kind of tried to incorporate. But just to give you an idea of like something specific, and then turning it into something that's, you know, usable throughout the film. Anyway, it's super nerdy and boring, but
not boring at all.
And it's interesting because you think about Mike, you think about the pressure of having to please Kubrick and Stephen King on the same film. And you have to please the studio. And I remembered thinking in my mind, my God, the stress level must be through the roof. Like just, I couldn't even imagine how in the world he got the script. Like, and they were both, all the camps were super in love with what he was doing. And my mind was blown, because if you know the story of The Shining, if you know King, how he feels about it, if you know Kubrick, like it's just my mind was blown. So it was like every day you were constantly inspired, always. And so if you had to stay up all night or work all day, whatever it was, you were so pumped by all these incredible facets. It was just a complete honor.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible movie. And I have to say, I love all of your work. I love all of Mike's work. So I think a lot of it comes down to me where I was in my life. So for me, as far as TV goes, away from The Shining a little bit. I'm sorry, away from Dr. Sleep a little bit. I have to say, I think Haunting of Hill House has moved me most, and I think it's because that year I lost my father, and I think that last 20 minutes is some of the greatest television I've ever seen in my life. I'm nearly 50 years on this planet, and I love the way your music holds the actor's hand in the whole story's hand as the story finishes, whereas other movies, quote unquote horror, where it's and Halloween's fantastic, but the music just kicks down the door and it's like, okay, it's a great score soundtrack. Same with Friday the 13th. But I just love the way your music in Hill House is just so, the end and the beginning of the end movement 1 through 4, that's some of the greatest stuff I've ever heard. Like, it's just some of the greatest stuff I've ever heard.
Oh,
wow. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry to hear about your dad. I know how those experiences go hand in hand, with things that we're experiencing in life and seeing films and projects and how that lands. It's very, we've had a similar thing, like working on projects where you'll always remember a certain, like there's something that stands very strong in all of our like souls, right? That you can't explain. And sometimes music and stories are the only things that give like some sort of, it's not even comfort, but just sort of speak to like the enormity of what someone meant to you, So I'm sorry about your dad, and that thank you for saying those things.
Yeah, it's just your stuff. It's amazing in the way that the acting, where Timothy Hutton and Henry are alternating, what their kids meant to them, and like I said, your music is an enormous part of that. Like, it's just know it's valued with people. There's millions of people like me that love your work in that same way.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Did Hill House move you like it moved me? I mean, I'm probably a little bit over the top with it, but did it move you guys like it moved me?
I can answer that super, super quickly. Yes.
Yeah.
We were crying. I was bawling before there was any music even in there. We saw cuts and we spotted it with Mike, and it was very emotional, and it brought up a lot of emotion for several people, I recall, who were watching it. Mike's had that effect on us many times. Midnight Mass at the end. He did this movie called Before I Wake that just wrecked me. So he has that ability to really pull on your heartstrings. But yes, Haunting of Hill House specifically did bring me to tears.
Yeah, and I wish people would stop saying horror, right? Because this is not a horror movie. This is a movie about love and family, and there's horror elements to it, but this is about family and love. Like, you could substitute any of those, horror moments out, with real world, things, and it's just, it works. It clearly works, but it's like, this is definitely a movie about like love and family and even parenthood, like this to some degree. It's beautiful the way Mike, the way you guys work as a team, and I hope this lasts really for a long, long time.
Oh, thank you. And I think Mike said this in an interview, and then I think that they use this in some of the marketing. But in talking about Hill House, Mike talked about how, like, to your point of it not being a horror, he talked about, like, someone brought up ghosts, and he said, well, really, the ghosts can be a memory of someone you've lost. It could be a memory of an event that you wish you had done differently so that you could have changed a relationship. It could be, something, and I think it could be love. It could be loss of love. And I think that's why Mike's stories land so beautifully with everyone, is because he's telling like the story that we all live every day, that we all deal with these things that like they don't teach us in school. You know, I wish high school had a class for all of us that said like, look, you know, give everything you got to every single day, but keep in mind things are going to come up and it's going to shake you and it's going to be hard, and it's okay for it to be hard. And Mike really explores that. It's really well done.
And Bly has elements of that. Midnight Mass certainly has some elements of that through religion. So yeah, I mean, I just, the way he does it is amazing. What are you guys able to say about your next project with Mike?
Well, you mean the Midnight Club or the
Midnight Club? Yes. Midnight Club. Wait, I wasn't aware there was another one. I was Midnight Club is what I was talking about, but you could say whatever you'd like.
I'll let Andy.
It's all music. It's all music to my ears. I love hearing anything. If it's you, if it's the two of you and Mike Flanagan, I'm all ears.
Oh, too kind.
Yeah, we're working on the Midnight Club right now, and it's a great story. Mike and the writers and the producers have all really done a good job of shaping some incredible stories that sort of it tells. Yeah, there are a lot. I can't say much, but I can say that there
I
are.
don't want to get you in trouble.
A lot of stories within it that are all very creative and moving and heartfelt in all the ways that you would imagine. And it's been a lot of fun. We're kind of in the midst of it right now.
And I got to tell you, the synopsis, it's like when you read it, it's like I'm dying to see what they do with this, because it's from IMDb, so it's not like a NDA kind of thing. It's 5 terminally ill people who share stories at midnight. I mean, that's a rough ballpark.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's Christopher Pike, obviously, Midnight, the Midnight Club.
Yeah.
And it's exactly, terminally ill, and they're telling stories. So, it leaves the frontier to be very creative. And
Taylor, you can keep going. Like, you don't have to stop there. You can like keep going. You don't have to. Or Andy, you guys. I mean, listen,
I'll be the first. I'll be the first to say something, and then I'll get an email. And then I'll get an email from Netflix.
Do you know like approximately estimated? Is it 2023? You think maybe a little bit later? Is it tough to tell at this point?
I don't know for sure. I think it might be out this year, but I don't want to speak out of turn. But I think the idea is for it to be out this year. But I think it's tough now. with COVID, it also affects post-production because schedules move.
Yep.
And
it's there's not much anyone can do about it. So it's tough to say exactly.
And lastly, is this a Netflix production, or is this on?
It is. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'm super excited, and guys, I got to tell you, I'm a big fan. And after today's interview, I can't speak highly enough about each of you, and I do hope one day you guys come back and we can shoot the shit again. You guys are good people and wonderful composers, and I'm very blessed that you have come on today and given me so much of your time.
No, wow. Thank you so much. We would love to come back. So please, let's do this again.
Health and happiness to you both, and take care of yourselves.
Right back at you. Thank you.